you think I'm spooky?
Be afraid. Be very afraid. What have you done to its eyes?
Good evening and welcome to Soft and Spooky. For today's video, we are going to be looking at the January horror release, Wolfman. Ow! Ow! Ow, ow. Okay. For this video, it is going to be my standard format of doing a movie review where the first portion is going to be spoiler-free. So if you did want to know my thoughts, but you still possibly wanted to see it, you can have a nice safety little portion in the beginning. But then the second portion is going to be a lot more in-depth with my spoiler-filled thoughts. But don't worry, rest assured, I am going to give you plenty of notice before I go into spoilers. And yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and sink our teeth in. Wolfman is directed by Leigh Whanell, who a lot of people are familiar with for co-creating the Saw series as well as the Insidious films. He also did Upgrade and one of my personal favorites, The Invisible Man. Not only that, but Whanell also has a pretty lengthy list of films that he's acted in, and I just kind of love to see someone participating in all aspects of film. It's just kind of cool because I think when you participate in a specific area of making films, going outside of that, you really appreciate all the aspects that go into creating something. And I don't know, I love to see that. I think with the films that Whanell has created, I see a lot of different range in the feel to each one. Since this film is actually the second adaptation of one of the classic Universal monsters that Whanell has directed, I was interested to see, or I was looking forward for this film to bring a similar vibe that was brought in The Invisible Man. The story of this film is centered around a family that is traveling towards an inherited home from the family. And I have a bubble. The story of Wolfman centers around this family that is traveling towards this inherited home. And on their way, they are terrorized by this unseen creature. And the creature actually attacks the father, played by Christopher Abbott. And over the course of the film, we see these gruesome changes that he undergoes. I'm not gonna lie, I really had my hopes up for this one because I was just so impressed with Whanell's previous work with The Invisible Man. The cinematography on that film from Stefan Duccio, it's incredible. I also think it was fantastic acting from the entire cast. And there even were moments in that film, there was one specific moment in The Invisible Man where my jaw dropped. I mean, it completely took me by surprise. I think that was a super well fleshed out story. It was well developed, and sadly, I think Wolfman really lives in The Invisible Man's shadow. One thing I will say is if you were interested in seeing this film and you haven't seen the trailer yet, don't.
For the love of God and all that is holy!
Do not watch the trailer. It reveals so many of the best shots. It also completely deflates this tension that they're building in one of the scenes because you know how it ends because we saw it in the trailer. And I feel like it reveals so much of the changes that the father goes through. I'm just like, if you saw the trailer, you basically saw so much of the movie. I don't think the people cast in this film were bad actors by any means, but I don't think that they had a ton to work with in this. They didn't feel like real people to me. It's also interesting to note that Christopher Abbott, who plays the father Blake, he was not the original choice for the role. They actually had originally cast Ryan Gosling, and I'm just curious to see if that would have drastically been a different feel to the role. I think Christopher Abbott did do a solid job with this performance, just seeing the turmoil of him undergoing these significant changes, but I wish we saw more facets to his character. Yes, he is a father and a husband, but what's his personality? What are his hopes and dreams? It's stated that he is a writer that's in between jobs, but it doesn't really have a significant impact on the plot. We don't even know what kind of author he is. I mean, is it nonfiction? Is it crime novels, children's books? I don't know. And I feel like there was like scenes cut out or something because I felt like that didn't influence anything. I also did not like the character of Charlotte in this film. She is played by Julia Garner, and I've seen her in a few things, but I definitely feel like this is a weaker performance for her, or at least this is just like a very bizarre character. I can't go into too much specifics about it, but there are certain scenes where I just feel as though she has a very drastic underreaction to things, like the events that are occurring, and it kind of took me out of the moment. I'm also gonna say it, and you can't claim that I'm being ageist here because I have commended child actors on previous films like The Black Phone or Dr. Sleep, so I'm not against kid actors. Ooh, but I did not like the child actor here. I do think that there is a very strong theme that she plays an important part for in the film, but I don't think that it's translated as powerfully as it could have with a different actor. Oh, I feel so bad because I know it's a kid, but like, I'm sorry. Like, there's one point, oh, here, my toes crack. Ooh, that was a good one. I do appreciate the fact that her name is Ginger, which I kind of wonder if it's a nod to another werewolf film called Ginger Snaps. So if that's intentional, that's kind of cool. That being said, I do think that there are at least a couple scenes where I think the dialogue is pretty good. There's a scene where Blake's wife, Charlotte, she comes home and she's having this very tense conversation with, I think, her editor. And he was like making dinner, talking to Ginger and just like having a good vibe. And he asks her like, hey, can you take that in the other room? And she like ignores him twice. And then after she gets off the phone, she's like, please don't do that, you know? And I think that that actually was a pretty good and understated way to demonstrate that like, this couple, they're kind of having some issues right now. I related to that sense of like, I guess, dread when you're in a good mood and either a partner or a family member comes home and they just bring this bad energy and it like switches the whole vibe of the house. And I don't know, it's wild that in a film it can make you feel the same thing where it's like, oh, within seconds of them walking through the door, you know what kind of night it's going to be. And I don't know, I think that actually was pretty effective for me. I also thought the body horror... What was that? There's a wolf outside. I also thought that the body horror was very effective. It looked very grisly and juicy and real, and I think that the special effects makeup team did a fantastic job. I also have to commend the director, Leigh Whanell, for making the decision to do all practical effects instead of CGI for Wolfman. I think that it looked very realistic, and I don't know, man, like practical effects, I think they hold up the best. Similar to Nosferatu, the makeup team decided to go a different direction with the character design of Wolfman. With this design, you can kind of see more of the progression as it slowly transforms from human to getting more sick and animalistic, and I think it looked pretty cool. Personally, I think that the direction and the cinematography were definitely the brightest parts of the film. There are some pretty creative jump scares that really utilize the darkest parts of the shot, and I think that, one, it helps me identify that, oh, this is a Leigh Whanell film, because he seems to do that a lot with like either empty spaces or darkened spaces. You're constantly scanning to look for the creature or the bad presence, and I think that it's really effective for me. That scares the crap out of me, and it also it looks great. I think that the cinematography from Stefan Duccio, it just is lovely, and I'm kind of upset that so much of it was included in the trailer because it wasn't as fresh as like seeing it for the first time and really being impressed by it in a theater. I had already seen it in the trailer. And so it just kind of like deflated that excitement a little bit. But the cinematography itself is very beautiful. Without spoilers, I would say that Wolfman is very middle of the road for me with its dialogue as well as its plot. I was expecting something very bold and daring and bringing something new to this story, and ultimately it's just a very average horror movie. All right, and that just about does it for my spoiler-free thoughts. If you were still interested in seeing the movie, definitely click out of the video now. But before you go, definitely give this video a thumbs up so you help me in the algorithm. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Really helps out the channel. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the spoilers in 3, 2, 1, spoilers. Okay, so I think I want to first get into some funny things that I noticed that don't really fit anywhere in my review, but I need to talk about them. First off, there are a couple unintentionally hilarious scenes. First of which, there is a scene where Blake is, I think, standing in the kitchen, and we get a jump scare of the Wolfman reaching and grabbing his leg, and he's reaching through the doggy door. And I think that is so funny because it's like, it's a wolf. It's just a big doggo, you know? And it just caught me off guard. Another fun one is when Blake is in the barn, he actually gets his leg caught in this bear trap, and he decides to just gnaw through that thing, like all the way down to the bone. And I almost wonder, because Leigh Whanell, the director, wrote some of the Saw movies, and in the first Saw movie, there is a character that has to saw through his leg that is chained up. And I wonder if that was kind of like a nod to Saw? Who knows? There is a weirder one, and it was a very interesting choice. So when Blake first gets infected, he starts to get like extra thirsty, like he is parched. And so he goes into the kitchen sink, and the sound design was so jarring. I wish I had a clip of it, but he's like going goblin mode, and it just, the sound was so loud and sloppy. This is gonna go over a lot of people's heads, and maybe you're blessed, but there is an old video on the internet. Mom and Dad, don't look this up. It was called Grapefruit Your Man. And and it sounded like so similar to it. Anyway, back to the serious review of this film. I definitely want to talk about the character Julia Garner plays, named Charlotte. So she's witnessing her husband going through it. Like, they just had a car crash, and he's attacked by this wolf man, and he's running around looking not human, and she just seems so unfazed by everything. Like, I'm sorry, did you not just see your husband puke up blood and chew into his arm? Which, wow, that was such a great effect in the film. He's like, he gets, you know, the original cut, and then she wraps it up, and then she sees all this blood, and they like unwrap the bandage, and you just see that it's all like juicy. And then he starts like really chewing on his arm, and it honestly is exactly the way I feel if I let the intrusive thoughts win when like a new tattoo gets to that itchy stage. One of the main underreactions that really stood out to me is basically Blake is fighting the other wolfman that scratched him, and at this point he's looking like the in-between frames of an animorph. Like, he's very kind of not quite human, but not quite animal. And she just like lets him in, like, come on in. She seems more annoyed than anything. It's like the family dog just rolled around in mud outside and just like, come on, you know? And it just, what is that reaction? That's your husband. I think the only added layer that wasn't displayed in the trailer was that Blake's father was the wolfman that turns him. And let me tell you, that pissed me off. When we start out the film, we are in a flashback from when Blake was a little kid, and he is out hunting with his father, and we see that his father has a very recognizable tattoo. They see the wolfman, attempt to shoot at it, but to no avail. We push forward 30 years later, and Blake gets this letter that finally declares his father deceased. It's an interesting word, finally. It's almost like he was missing or something. From the trailer, we know that Blake gets scratched by an already existing Wolfman. So I don't know if it's just me, but already the cogs were starting to turn, and I was like, he's missing. There's already a Wolfman. I think it's gonna be his dad. And I guessed that in the third scene. And I promise you, I am a dummy film goer. Like, I know a lot of people are actively like looking for plot holes or trying to figure out the ending or the killer or the murder mystery. No, I don't do any of that. I like to just sit and let the story unfold. I let the movie tell me things in the sequence that they want to. And so the fact that I wasn't even actively trying to figure it out, it felt like, wow, that was pretty guessable, pretty easy. So, okay, whatever. The movie progresses and Blake is fighting the Wolfman that scratched him, and he ends up cutting its throat and it dies. But we see that on that Wolfman, there is that same tattoo that his father had.
What a twist!
Even that, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You know, that's the twist that we're going for, that's fine. But here's the part that made me angry. So Ginger asks what happened, and Charlotte proceeds to just spell out what happened. She said that Blake's father was missing and that he turned into what Blake is turning into. Why?
Why?
Why did we do that? It felt like there wasn't enough confidence in the audience's intelligence to have surmised that. And it was such a bummer. I even would have accepted if they just did like a quick flashback. If, you know, maybe the audience didn't remember the tattoo and showed his dad. That even would have been better than spelling it out like this. And that choice really disappointed me. In a similar vein, I have beef with the trailer showing so much. So there's this guy that the family encounters while they're trying to find Blake's dad's house, and he offers to help them find it. And he's a weird dude. You get a very like, I'm gonna make you into human jerky kind of vibe coming off of him. And I think that the film was really building up the suspense. And had I not seen the trailer, I would have felt like there was some sort of risk here. But instead, the trailer shows that he falls out of the truck, like the truck flips, he falls out of the truck and gets attacked by the Wolfman. And it's such a shame because I feel with how tense that ride was and the weird comments the guy was saying, that it really could have been a nice moment to subvert the expectation. Like, you think that this guy is a threat. No, there's another threat. And the trailer just shows that, nope, that's not how it goes down. I was waiting for the car crash. And it was a shame. To give the film credit, I do feel like there was a very interesting underlying theme that was presented. But over the course of the film, I don't think that it was developed enough. In the first scene with Blake and his father, you see that his dad is pretty intense. Like, he's a little gruff with his son, especially after reprimanding him for leaving that, like, hunting bluff or like the hunting treehouse thing. And in the next scene, 30 years later, you kind of see Blake having a similar interaction where he's very upset with his daughter Ginger doing something very dangerous on the city street. What sets him apart, though, is that Blake apologizes and he says to Ginger, sometimes when you're a daddy, you're so scared of your kids getting scars that you become the thing that scars them. In my mind, it feels like Blake was trying to break the cycle of giving this kind of overprotective, aggressive trait that his father had. When you think of dysfunctional generational patterns or cycles, the main goal is to not become the monster that your parent was to you and to not take on those negative traits. And I think that this fits really well with this story, that Blake's father is the one to turn him into the Wolfman, which is the same monster he was. During Blake's transformation, the first level of disconnect is he no longer is able to speak or understand the same language as Charlotte and Ginger. And I think that this really replicates what happens in real family fallout, where the family members no longer seek to understand one another, and it's a lack of communication. And what's so sad is that it is eventually his daughter, Ginger, that breaks that cycle, and she is the one that says he needs to stop and be killed. Let me know if I'm reading too much into it, but if that was the intended underlying theme, I think that it is just such an interesting concept that I really wish would have been brought to the forefront of the film. Alternatively, when I was looking for some additional information on the film, I saw that Leigh Whanell had actually stated in an interview that this project was actually a way of dealing with the passing of his close friend due to ALS. In the interview, he says, "It's heartbreaking when your body turns against you and begins shutting down. It's a real-life horror movie for both the person suffering and the people left behind." This film allowed him to process the fear that his friend may have felt and capture the fear that Blake experiences as he feels himself slipping away. I never thought about it before, but creature features like this are a great way to kind of parallel what it is like to receive a diagnosis that is life-altering, and the way that we scratch and claw to hold some semblance of our former lives. And personally, I feel like if the film had veered more into the psychological impacts of the family and developed the familial relationships a bit more, I think that this really would have been a great tale of tragic loss. But ultimately, I felt like the film was fine. I didn't hate it. I definitely didn't hate it. But I think that it really paled in comparison to the complexity that Whanell brought to The Invisible Man. I think I was expecting that for this film. So as I said in the spoiler-free portion, I don't regret seeing this movie, but I just wish I loved it more. Also, how are you going to have a Wolfman movie and not have a shot of him howling in front of the moon? Like, I was waiting for it. Where was it? But yeah, that just about does it for my thoughts on Wolfman. Have you seen it? Are you interested in all of these kind of Universal monster adaptations coming out this year? Let me know in the comments below. While you're there, feel free to give this video a thumbs up so I know you enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I am a small channel, so any interaction, whether it's a like or a subscription, really helps boost me in the algorithm so I can keep creating content I love to make. And with that, I will see you all in the next video. Don't forget to stay soft and spooky. Bye.